The black janitor was asked to play the piano as a joke, but what he played brought even the CEO to tears. Marcus Reed, 39, a single father and former veteran, now works as a janitor at the prestigious Lexington Hall. His calloused hands moved gently over the Steinway piano's surface, each tiny movement touching something both sacred and fragile. The stage lights poured down like crystal, tracing every line of Marcus's solemn, pensive face. "Careful with that cloth," Marcus murmured, his voice almost swallowed by the hush of the vast hall. "This piano has seen more than you'd ever imagine." He wasn't speaking to anyone in particular, but to himself, and to the precious instrument before him. The Steinway sat in complete stillness, as if listening to every whispered word, every hidden sorrow that Marcus carried. Outside Lexington Hall, staff hurried about preparing for the upcoming gala. Footsteps echoed, glasses clinked, and harsh commands drifted in from backstage. Yet Marcus stood apart in the bustle, silent and unseen as a shadow. He bent low, methodically wiping every inch of the piano, cradling it like a priceless heirloom. "Daddy, are you talking to the piano?" came a soft, clear voice from behind. Marcus turned and smiled warmly. It was Maya, his 8-year-old daughter, clutching a weathered sketchbook to her chest. Her curly hair framed her small face, and her oversized hoodie and worn canvas shoes made her seem even more delicate. "Talking to it?" Marcus chuckled gently. "No, Maya, this piano is a cathedral. Every key is a step toward heaven. It's far more than just an object." Maya giggled, a pure chime in the stillness of the hall. She settled into a shadowy corner, her little hands flying across the page as she sketched her father beside the piano. Marcus paused his polishing, watching her with quiet pride. A sharp voice cut through their moment of calm. "Hurry up with that cleaning, Mr. Reed. Miss Harper will be here any minute, and everything has to be perfect." It was the stage manager, a young woman in a stiff suit, clipboard in hand, her impatience plain on her face. Marcus nodded wordlessly and hastily gathered his tools. He knew his place. Janitors didn't waste the time of the important people. But before he could step off stage, a mocking voice rang out, making him freeze. Well, look at our janitor caressing the piano like it's his long-lost lover. How adorable. The words came from Vincent Moore, a wealthy music critic with early silver hair, an expensive suit, and glossy Italian shoes, his arrogance as finely tailored as his wardrobe. Staff around him stifled reluctant chuckles, but Marcus remained silent. He was too accustomed to this contempt for it to faze him. "So, Marcus," Vincent continued loudly, "what's next? Vacuuming the stage in tears?" Laughter spilled from the onlookers, some not even trying to hide their amusement. Marcus's lips stayed still, but his hand tightened into a fist, and his jaw set, swallowing a surge of wounded pride. From the dim edge of the stage, Maya paused her drawing, her bright eyes wide with concern. She could see her father enduring those cruel jabs in silence. The hurt was written in his distant gaze and the deep, controlled breaths only she could feel. "Hold on," Vincent sneered as Marcus turned to step away. He flashed a derisive smile, his gaze cutting into Marcus like a blade. "Tell me, do you even know what you're cleaning? That piano you're treating like a treasure." Marcus turned back, his eyes calm and deep, devoid of anger but filled with conviction. "Yes, I do," he replied softly but firmly. "It's a 9-foot Steinway Model D with over 12,000 moving parts. The wood is select maple and spruce. The keys, once ivory, are now made of a special synthetic. Its value exceeds that of the Mercedes out front, and it holds more stories than you've ever written." The hall went ice cold. Every laugh died. Vincent stood open-mouthed, utterly unprepared for the knowledgeable response from a janitor. Marcus turned on his heel and walked deeper into the wings. His broad shoulders stooped under silent pain. Maya raced to his side and threw her arms around him. "Daddy, are you okay?" she whispered. Marcus smiled, tousling her hair. "I'm fine, sweetheart." "Really?" But beneath his gentle reassurance, the echo of those cruel words lay heavy on his heart. He lifted his cleaning cloth one last time, then slipped off the stage in quiet humiliation. Just then, the grand doors of Lexington Hall burst open, and Evelyn Harper entered, radiating power and poise. Marcus caught a glimpse of her from afar. He had no idea that his simple words had planted a seed of admiration and curiosity in her mind, setting in motion events neither of them could yet foresee. What Marcus didn't realize was that his life was about to change, sparked by the very taunts meant to degrade him. Marcus slipped off the stage in silence, each step weighed down as if he carried stones in his heart. Though his walk looked effortless, it bore the burden of the taunts that had just pierced him, words as sharp and cold as knives cutting into the pride he'd fought so hard to preserve. He bowed his head, his cleaning cloth gripped so tightly his knuckles whitened. Never before had he felt such a sting of humiliation, not only from Vincent Moore's cruel barbs, but from the complicit silence of everyone around him. Since when had he become so invisible, merely a faded silhouette, an object of ridicule in their eyes? Maya saw the slightest tremor of emotion cross her father's face. His eyes glinted with a pain he desperately tried to hide behind a mask of calm. She clung to his arm, her tiny fingers trembling as if they, too, ached to share in his sorrow. "Daddy, let's go home," Maya whispered, her voice so soft it seemed afraid to wound him further. Marcus sank to a low step beside her, gently stroking her hair, forcing a smile that barely touched his eyes. "We're not done yet, sweetheart. Just a little longer," he said, voice catching. Maya nodded, though her heart still fluttered with worry. Marcus stood, picked up his cleaning kit, and returned to his work with mechanical precision. But his mind drifted far away, lost in memories. 15 years earlier, Marcus had been a prodigious student at Juilliard, his hands praised as a gift from God. Every note he played sent shivers through his audience's hearts. For him, music was life itself, breath, world, and the boundless beauty he yearned to conquer. But all those dreams shattered on the night he learned his wife, Rachel, had succumbed to complications giving birth to Maya. He vowed never to touch a piano again, each key a reminder of an irreparable loss. Music became forbidden. He chose a simple, unseen job, just like this one, to quietly raise Maya, his only remaining love and legacy. A sharp click of heels echoed from the hall's entrance. Evelyn Harper appeared, clad in a sleek black jumpsuit that radiated authority. She moved like a queen, her keen gaze sweeping every detail. Not only was she a celebrated CEO, but the architect of a musical empire. Unconsciously, Marcus straightened, his eyes flicking to hers. For a brief moment, curiosity softened her expression. Then he bowed his head, avoiding her look. "Is everything cleaned?" Evelyn asked the stage manager, her tone polite yet commanding. "Just finished, Miss Harper," the manager replied, his eyes darting to Marcus with thinly veiled irritation. Evelyn approached the Steinway, her delicate fingers brushing its polished surface as if savoring the curves Marcus had so lovingly tended. She frowned slightly, then turned to him again, as though searching for something deeper in this unlikely janitor. Marcus felt a jolt of self-consciousness and pretended to inspect his tools. From the back, Vincent Moore watched with his face twisted by anger and envy. He had everything: status, wealth, fame, but lacked the one thing that truly mattered: genuine musical talent. His reviews were notorious not only for their wit but for their cruelty, his pen a weapon to cast others into obscurity. Yet he knew, better than anyone, that he was an outsider, a critic who never dared to perform. Now, seeing an ordinary black man catch Evelyn Harper's attention, Vincent's jealousy burned like smoldering coals. He tightened his grip on his champagne glass, a defiant smile curling his lips. Meanwhile, Marcus resumed his careful work, fighting the pull of Evelyn's gaze. He knew who he was and how vast the gap lay between him and these glittering elites. Still, Vincent's spiteful words lingered in his heart like invisible wounds that refused to stop bleeding. "Daddy?" Maya called softly from behind, pulling him back from his dark thoughts. Marcus turned to his daughter, his eyes softened, and for a moment nothing else mattered. He knelt to embrace her and whispered with quiet resolve, "Everything will be all right, Maya. I'm right here with you." Yet Marcus did not know that this was only the beginning, and that the pain of today would reignite the passion for music he'd buried so long ago. A quiet flame of hurt and strength was kindling within him, one that would forever change Marcus Reed's life. Marcus let the cloth drop once more, his fingers instinctively brushing the piano's gleaming surface. Soft light from above danced across the Steinway, reflecting Marcus's face as though it floated on still water. In that fleeting moment his gaze sank deep into memory, and Rachel's image emerged as vividly as if she'd never left. He remembered the very first day he met Rachel at Juilliard. Marcus was then a young student ablaze with passion, his days consumed entirely by music and lofty dreams. Rachel entered his life like the first shaft of sunlight piercing a cold darkness. She wasn't a virtuoso, but she loved music with a fierce, pure devotion. She would tell him, her laughter clear as a mountain spring, "Your music makes the whole world beautiful, Marcus." They fell in love swiftly and intensely, as if tomorrow would never come. When Rachel told him she was pregnant, Marcus felt happier than he ever had. But life, as it often does, turned cruel. The joy of Rachel's impending motherhood gave way to unspeakable grief the day Maya was born, because it was also the day Rachel slipped away forever. Marcus replayed the moments in that hospital waiting room, the doctor emerging with a heavy heart to deliver the news that Rachel wouldn't survive. Marcus's world shattered in an instant. From then on, every time Marcus saw the piano keys, he only saw Rachel. Notes that once overflowed with joy for others now strangled him with pain. He vowed never to touch another piano, choosing the invisible life of a janitor so he could raise Maya quietly, as simple a life as possible, so his heart would never endure that agony again. But now, standing in the vast Lexington Hall, Marcus felt that vow beginning to dissolve. Rachel's presence felt so real that his old passion surged beneath his skin, passion he'd thought buried forever. Across the hall, Evelyn Harper stood motionless, her sharp eyes fixed on Marcus. Evelyn was not one to reveal her emotions. She'd spent years cultivating an aura of cool detachment. Yet Marcus unsettled her. She was accustomed to glamour and calculation, a world where everyone proved their worth through outward splendor. Marcus was different. He polished the piano as though tending something sacred, an intensity of reverence she'd never seen in anyone else. Evelyn watched more closely and realized Marcus was hiding a deep, unspoken sorrow in his eyes. She'd met gifted artists who poured their pain into music, but she'd never before seen an ordinary man, a black janitor, carry such musical understanding. These thoughts swirled in Evelyn's mind, though she couldn't explain why she felt drawn into this stranger's story. She shook her head, trying to dispel the questions crowding her thoughts. Evelyn Harper wasn't easily swayed by mysteries, yet something about Marcus held her attention. From another dark corner, Vincent Moore observed with venom in his gaze. He'd seen the curious, concerned look Evelyn had cast at Marcus, and it stoked his jealousy like tinder to flame. Vincent believed Evelyn's recognition was a privilege owed only to the elite, like himself, a man of renown, wealth, and influence in the music world. And yet now Evelyn's focus was on someone he'd always dismissed. The slight wounded his fragile pride. Vincent knew all too well the pang of inadequacy and insecurity about his own talent. He'd spent his life standing apart, wielding his scathing pen to drag true artists into despair. But deep down, he craved genuine admiration, not for his power or money, but for real talent he could never possess. Now Marcus Reed stood in his way, embodying everything Vincent secretly yearned for yet could never attain. And Vincent resolved in that moment that he would not allow Marcus to exist so unchallenged before him. Impossible. Marcus suddenly lifted his head, sensing someone's gaze upon him. He brushed the thought away and returned to his work in silence. Maya sat beside him, her sketches now trembling with worry. She sensed more clearly than ever that her father's old wounds were resurfacing, threatening to drown his heart once again. Marcus gave the piano one final, gentle wipe. He exhaled, and for an instant, past and present merged. Within him, the fire of music he thought extinguished flickered anew. Wounded, yes, but still ablaze with hope. A truth even Marcus had yet to recognize. Marcus had just finished cleaning and slowly walked off the stage, his steps heavy with memories and an unshakable unease. The lights of Lexington Hall blazed as guests in glittering formal wear began to arrive. Laughter and lively chatter filled the air. Yet Marcus felt as though he stood alone in darkness, utterly cut off from that world of glamour. Vincent Moore stood amid the crowd, a champagne flute spinning gently in his hand. His lips curled in a malicious grin. He closed the distance to Marcus with deliberate steps, his cold eyes fixed on the janitor with undisguised contempt. "Marcus," Vincent jeered loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "you've polished that piano pretty thoroughly, haven't you? Or do you want to give it a little more love?" Tittering laughter rippled through the onlookers, flushing Marcus's cheeks. He replied evenly, though his discomfort showed. "I've completed my work, Mr. Moore." "Oh, I don't think so, Marcus." Vincent laughed, his eyes gleaming wickedly. "I suspect that piano still needs your tender care. Tell me, you know how to play, don't you? Why not treat us to a tune?" His words stabbed at Marcus's pride like a cold blade. Curious and mocking gazes swiveled toward him, making him feel smaller than ever. Gathering himself, Marcus said politely, "I'm sorry, but I'm just the janitor here. I'm not in a position to perform." Vincent wasn't done. He set his glass down, leaned in, and raised his voice to draw more attention. "Oh, come on, Marcus. I saw how lovingly you handled that Steinway. You must be a brilliant player to adore it so much. Don't be shy. We'd all love to hear you play." The room's energy shifted, tension crackling in the air. Many guests fixed their eyes on Marcus, waiting for his reaction. He froze, pride warring with the deep pain he'd buried long ago. He felt Maya's worried gaze on him from behind and turned to meet his daughter's anxious dark eyes. His chest tightened as if gripped by an invisible hand. Nearby, Evelyn watched the scene with simmering concern. She wanted to step in and stop Vincent's cruelty, but her position and decorum held her back. Still, she couldn't help wondering why Marcus was singled out for such vicious humiliation. Her fists clenched as her discomfort grew. Vincent, seeing Marcus unmoved, dialed up the taunts. "Or are you worried you'll damage that precious Steinway? Don't worry, Marcus. We won't dock your pay. Consider this a little gift you're giving all of us." Cruel laughter buzzed around the hall like needles pricking at Marcus's composure. He inhaled deeply, forcing his voice to stay calm. "Mr. Moore, I'm sorry, but I really can't do that. I wouldn't want to inconvenience the guests with my limited abilities." He fought to contain the burning anger inside him, though his eyes betrayed his hurt and indignation. Vincent recognized that look and savored it. For him, publicly humiliating Marcus was more than amusement. It was a way to assert his own superiority. Maya edged closer, her small hand gripping his. She felt her father's shame as keenly as her own pain, and it broke her heart. Marcus squeezed her hand gently, drawing a fragile strength from her touch. Evelyn remained rooted in place, torn by conflicting emotions. She despised Vincent's cruelty, yet felt powerless to intervene directly. Her gaze kept drifting back to Marcus and Maya, stirred by an inexplicable curiosity. What lay beneath Marcus's quiet dignity to provoke such spite? Whispers swelled like restless waves crashing over Marcus, and he felt adrift on a stormy sea. He knew he faced a challenge unlike any before, a test he hadn't expected and couldn't escape. So Marcus stood there in silence, though inside him a fierce struggle raged between his painful past and this moment's humiliation. And he had no idea that the decision he was about to make would change his life forever. Marcus stood motionless for a moment, the mocking laughter and derisive glances from the crowd slicing into him like razor-sharp blades. Vincent Moore's cruel barbs echoed through Lexington Hall, each word dripping with contempt and forming an invisible weight that made it hard for Marcus to breathe. Maya gripped his small hand tightly, her eyes shining with deep sympathy as she watched her father endure wounds he didn't deserve. Vincent stepped closer, wearing a triumphant, self-satisfied grin as he raised his voice to capture the entire hall's attention. "Come on, Marcus. Are you only good at polishing pianos, too afraid to actually play in front of us? I'm guessing you've never truly touched a Steinway, have you?" A few guests tittered, but others began to shift uncomfortably, their faces flickering with doubt and curiosity. Marcus squeezed Maya's hand, then bent to meet her gaze, eyes filled with hope and trust, yet edged with worry. He realized this wasn't just about his own honor. It was about showing his daughter what strength and dignity looked like. Taking a deep breath, Marcus straightened his back and climbed onto the stage amid the audience's astonishment and curiosity. Evelyn Harper watched from afar, her eyes widening for a heartbeat. Normally, she kept her emotions in check, but something about Marcus had unsettled her. He approached the Steinway, his calloused hand gently resting on the cold keys he had just polished. Vincent's mocking laughter faded, replaced by a heavy hush settling over the hall. Marcus looked out into the front row and locked eyes with Vincent, cold, challenging eyes, but refused to look away, meeting that gaze with a resolve Vincent had never before seen. For a split second, Vincent seemed taken aback, then masked his surprise with a sneer. Marcus closed his eyes and saw Rachel's face vividly in his mind. He remembered her silent tears the first time she listened to him play, and how she'd told him, "Your music makes the world beautiful, Marcus." He never imagined he'd have to touch a piano before an audience again, but tonight he did it for his own dignity, for Maya, and for Rachel. He inhaled one final, steadying breath. His fingers hovered, then pressed the first key. and in that instant every other sound disappeared. Marcus began to play. The opening notes rose softly, like a whispered heartbeat. The tone was pure and crystalline, flowing like a mountain stream, filling every hidden corner of the audience's souls. His fingers danced over the keys with grace, skill, and power, so different from the humble janitor they'd just seen. His music told a story of love and loss, of hidden pain he'd buried for years. The raw honesty and passion in each phrase held everyone breathless, hanging on every note. Vincent froze in place, his expression shifting from surprise to anger, then settling into stark disappointment and helplessness. In that moment he realized how badly he'd misjudged the man before him. His jealousy flared, not only because Marcus's talent was undeniable, but because Marcus had faced his greatest fear and overcome it with pride, something Vincent had never done. Evelyn could not tear her eyes away. She sat motionless, feeling her heart stir with each resonant chord. In that moment, she recognized Marcus was far more than a simple janitor. He was a man with a beautiful, profound soul, a true artist forced to stay hidden too long. Below the stage, Maya stood wide-eyed with pride, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. Marcus was showing the entire world that, no matter how cruel life could be, her father would always stand strong, still the man she admired above all. When the final notes faded and his hands rose from the keys, the hall fell into complete silence. There was no laughter, no jeers, only the undeniable truth that they had all misjudged the man before them, the man they had dismissed as just a janitor. Marcus stood and surveyed the crowd with calm, powerful composure. In that moment he knew his life had turned a new page, one he had authored with courage and heartfelt sincerity from the depths of his soul. As the final notes slowly dissolved into the air, Marcus's hands lifted off the keys, and he raised his head to meet the absolute silence that had fallen over Lexington Hall. Every guest stood frozen, as if their very breaths had been swept away by the torrent of emotion they'd just witnessed. Evelyn Harper's eyes widened in astonishment, her lips parting in a rare, involuntary display of wonder. Accustomed as she was to perfection and control, she almost never revealed her true feelings. Yet Marcus's music had struck straight to her heart, awakening emotions she hadn't felt in years. She perceived the pain, hope, and genuine love woven into each melody. She'd never imagined that a man she only knew as a humble janitor could perform something so deeply moving. Across the hall, Vincent Moore's face turned ashen, his eyes betraying shame and anger he could no longer conceal. He'd always believed he could put Marcus in his place with sarcastic jabs, using the janitor's lowly station against him. But now, in front of Lexington's elite and the formidable Evelyn Harper, the woman whose favor he so desperately sought, Vincent had spectacularly destroyed his own reputation. He felt the accusing gazes of the crowd upon him, their judgment and scorn like a physical weight. His arrogance and prejudice, long hidden behind a veneer of sophistication, dissolved in an instant, revealing nothing but pettiness, selfishness, and insecurity. Vincent staggered back a step. The champagne flute in his hand trembled as he fought to mask the fury and embarrassment roiling inside him. Marcus rose to his feet, quietly staring at his hands as though rediscovering his own life, one he'd buried long ago. This moment wasn't about revenge or showmanship. It was his heartfelt confession, an emotional reunion with music itself, something he had deliberately abandoned but never truly forgotten. In the tense hush, Maya stood at the foot of the stage, her eyes shining with pride and joy. She had never felt so close to or more understood her father. She managed a small smile, her tiny hands clasping together as though her heart itself were swelling with strength, inspired by her father's courage. Then, from a corner of the room, the first clap rang out, shattering the oppressive silence. It was Evelyn, her applause confident and unwavering, her eyes alight with unhidden admiration. Suddenly, the entire hall was released from its spell of silence. A storm of clapping and cheering swept across the audience. Guests who had once looked at Marcus with doubt and disdain leapt to their feet, their ovations roaring through the hall. Vincent stood motionless amid the wave of acclaim for Marcus. His pride and ego had been gravely wounded. He felt as though the very world of elegance he'd tried to command had turned its back on him. He had never known such a bitter defeat, and he certainly hadn't expected it at the hands of an ordinary black janitor he'd spent so long deriding. Unable to bear his humiliation, Vincent quickly exited the hall, seeking to escape the pitying and mocking glances of those he left behind. For the first time in his life, he realized that power and wealth couldn't buy authenticity or courage, qualities Marcus had displayed so boldly in front of everyone. On stage, Marcus looked out at the standing crowd applauding him, his vision blurring with emotion. He hadn't anticipated such a powerful reaction, but deep down, he knew he'd achieved something far greater. He'd conquered the barriers of fear and pain from his past, and shown Maya that dignity and bravery are the most important gifts a father can give. Maya hurried onto the stage, throwing her arms around Marcus. Tears of happiness streaked down her small face. Marcus hugged his daughter tightly, feeling every hurt and sorrow melt away in her embrace. Evelyn stepped forward, meeting Marcus's gaze, her eyes reflecting understanding, respect, and something new she'd never experienced before. She offered him a gentle smile, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. "Thank you, Marcus. Truly, thank you for sharing this wonderful music with us." Marcus looked back at Evelyn, his heart full of confusion and gratitude. He nodded slightly, realizing that a new chapter in his life was unfolding, a chapter in which, for the first time, he felt genuinely free and happy. The applause gradually subsided, but the powerful resonance of Marcus's music still echoed in every heart present at Lexington Hall. Marcus stepped down from the stage, his hands still trembling slightly, feeling as though he had just survived a fierce battle with the painful memories of his past. Evelyn approached him softly, her gaze more tender and sincere than ever. Her initial curiosity had blossomed into deep, genuine admiration. Marcus looked up at her, humbled by the concern shining in the eyes of such a formidable woman. "Marcus," Evelyn spoke first, her voice gentle yet imbued with natural authority. "That performance was truly remarkable. I've never witnessed anything so honest and moving." Marcus nodded, a trace of hesitation in his eyes. "Thank you, Miss Harper. I only played what my heart told me." Evelyn held his gaze, as if she could glimpse the secrets he kept within. She continued deliberately. "I don't know your past, but I do know this. The world needs to hear more of the music you just shared. I want to help you, Marcus. I want to help you return to music properly." Marcus took a step back, fear flickering in his expression. To embrace music again meant confronting his past, confronting Rachel, confronting the most devastating loss of his life. Those memories terrified him, and he wasn't sure he was strong enough to walk that path once more. I'm grateful for your offer, Evelyn," Marcus said slowly, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "But I don't know if I can—" Evelyn placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, her eyes warm and understanding. "I understand, Marcus, but please, think it over carefully. Don't let past pain stop you from becoming the person you deserve to be." She smiled gently and turned away, leaving Marcus standing amidst the swirl of thoughts tearing at his mind. He felt like he stood at a crossroads, one path safe and familiar, the other fraught with challenge yet brimming with hope. Nearby, Maya had watched everything unfold. She stepped forward and gently tugged on his hand. Her small voice, though soft, carried firm conviction. "Daddy, I know what you're afraid of, but I think Mom would want you to be happy, to return to the music you love most. Maybe this is your chance not just to live for me, but to live for yourself too." Maya's words, full of love and encouragement, struck Marcus's heart like a beam of light, awakening a strength long dormant within him. He nodded, determination flickering in his gaze as he looked back toward Evelyn, who watched him from a short distance with that same warm, hopeful smile. Marcus knew in that moment his life would change forever. He no longer had the luxury of avoiding his past. He had to face the pain, accept it, and step forward with courage, because this journey wasn't just about rediscovering himself, but about honoring the love Rachel gave him and the faith Maya placed in her father. From the moment Marcus decided to face his past and return to the path of music, his life began to change in ways he had never imagined. Yet the brief glory he found quickly gave way to more bitter challenges than he'd ever anticipated. Challenges born of Vincent Moore's deep-seated jealousy. Still furious and humiliated after that night's performance at Lexington, Vincent resolved to use every ounce of his remaining influence to attack Marcus. Over the following weeks, he flooded newspapers and websites, large and small, with vicious, sarcastic articles, digging up Marcus's background, origin, and skin color. Vincent mocked him as a janitor playing at being an artist, implying that Marcus's talent was nothing more than a cheap emotional stunt designed to elicit pity. Those cruel, cutting words spread like wildfire, infiltrating every corner of Marcus's life. The very people who had once praised him now regarded him with suspicion and doubt. Marcus found himself at the center of a malicious media storm, powerless to escape its swirl. Each morning, he awoke to a barrage of hateful, vitriolic messages. He felt trapped in an endless loop of prejudice, every day a weary battle against the baseless accusations Vincent had sown. His newly rekindled confidence and courage began to fade, replaced by profound disappointment and bitterness. One late afternoon, Evelyn visited Marcus in his small apartment, finding him brooding before his battered old piano. Looking into his dark, pained eyes, she sensed the unseen wounds he was bearing, wounds far deeper than any he'd shown the world. "Marcus, don't let their cruelty hurt you," she said softly but firmly. "You deserve so much more than their vicious words." Marcus shook his head, despair settling over him. "I don't know any more, Evelyn. Maybe Vincent was right. I'm just a janitor. I was wrong to think I could step out of the shadows." Evelyn's heart ached at the sight of this talented man suffocating under societal prejudice. She squeezed his hand and spoke with resolve. "No, Marcus, you're not wrong. The real mistake lies with Vincent and people as narrow-minded as he is. I won't stand by and watch them destroy your life." The very next day, Evelyn called a special press conference at Lexington. Facing Vincent and an array of cameras and reporters, she declared with unshakable confidence, "I want everyone here to understand one thing. Marcus Reed is not only a gifted artist, but also one of the most dignified people I've ever met. Mr. Vincent Moore's slander, racism, and disrespect are the most shameful acts I've witnessed in my career." Vincent's face drained of color as he sputtered a rebuttal, trying to maintain his usual arrogance, even as his voice trembled under Evelyn's public rebuke. "Miss Harper, you're defending a fraud who's exploiting people's pity for fame. No, Mr. Moore, Evelyn cut him off decisively. "You're the one exploiting public trust to spread hatred, rooted in your own prejudice and fear. Marcus uses music to heal and inspire. You use words to destroy and wound." The room fell utterly silent. Reporters and guests held their breath as Evelyn's words landed like thunder. Vincent stood frozen, unable to summon a response. In that moment, everyone saw who was truly speaking the truth. Behind them, Marcus listened, each of Evelyn's words lifting him further from the abyss of despair. His heart swelled with gratitude and raw emotion as he watched this powerful woman defend him before the world. After the stormy press conference, Evelyn turned to Marcus, her eyes softer and more sincere than ever. "Marcus, never let anyone tell you that you're not enough or not worthy. This world needs more people like you, people who dare to live authentically and face every challenge to uphold their own worth." Marcus met her gaze, his own eyes slowly regaining the faith and strength he thought he'd lost. In that instant, he realized the path he'd chosen would not be easy, but he would not walk it alone. In the distance, Maya watched her father with pride shining in her eyes. In her gaze was the firm belief that her dad would overcome every trial, and Marcus understood that, after all he'd suffered, it was precisely Vincent's hurtful attacks that had forged him into someone braver, stronger, and more certain than ever of the path he had chosen. Immediately after her fierce showdown with Vincent, Evelyn understood that defending Marcus in the media was only the beginning. She saw that the wounds Marcus carried ran far deeper and needed true healing. The sight of his eyes, scarred by pain but still glowing with a faint spark of hope, spurred her to do something tangible and powerful to help him rise above prejudice and suffering. Evelyn quickly rallied her closest allies and mobilized her resources and influence to launch an unprecedented community music initiative. This program would not only showcase emerging talents, but also honor and reaffirm artists like Marcus, who had been held back by society's biases. Within weeks, every major paper was celebrating the deeply humane project she was spearheading. Despite facing criticism and skepticism, Evelyn remained steadfast. She hosted public gatherings, personally meeting and speaking with Marcus, demonstrating her support and publicly reaffirming her unwavering faith in his talent and dignity. From a distance, Vincent Moore watched every development, his anger growing. His defeat at Evelyn's hands and the community's enthusiastic backing of Marcus left him feeling isolated and powerless. He attempted to sow fresh doubts through his remaining connections, but this time his efforts fell flat. Evelyn's genuine, resolute actions began to drown out his negativity, leaving him ever more humiliated and bitter. Meanwhile, at first, Marcus felt overwhelmed and hesitant about Evelyn's ambitious plans. He feared he didn't deserve such grand gestures, afraid that his past wounds would once again trip him up. But as each day passed, Evelyn's small acts, her sincere encouragement, her thoughtful check-in calls, and the way she fearlessly confronted malicious criticism touched him deeply. One afternoon, Marcus sat lost in thought in the new practice room Evelyn had arranged. She entered with a gentle smile and warm eyes. "Marcus, how do you feel about the upcoming community concert? We'll even invite those who doubted you so they can experience your true talent firsthand." Marcus hesitated, a flicker of doubt in his gaze. "I'm so grateful for your support, Evelyn," he said. "But do I have the strength to do this?" Evelyn stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Her voice was firm yet kind. "Marcus, I witnessed your true strength at Lexington. You're not just an outstanding musician. You possess extraordinary inner resilience. Don't let cruel, meaningless words make you forget that." Looking into her eyes, Marcus felt her absolute sincerity and belief. For the first time in years, he realized he was not alone. Evelyn's genuine commitment not only helped him recognize his own worth, but also gave him the courage to truly move forward on his musical journey. On the day of the community concert, hundreds gathered at the open-air stage in the city center. Among the audience were curious faces, lingering skeptics, and even some of Vincent's former supporters. Marcus stepped onto the stage, his heart pounding. But when he looked out and saw Evelyn standing there with an encouraging smile, and Maya by her side, eyes shining with hope, his nerves settled into a calm, determined strength. He gently placed his hands on the keys, thinking of Rachel, of everything they'd shared and all he'd lost. But this time, the memory fueled him with inspiration rather than pain. He played a breathtaking, deeply emotional piece that left everyone present in stunned, heartfelt awe. In a shadowed corner, Vincent watched with a dark, disappointed expression. He suddenly realized that his schemes, rooted in prejudice and cruelty, had utterly failed. The thunderous applause and genuine smiles from the crowd were the clearest proof of his defeat. It felt to him as if the world he once controlled had turned its back, leaving him in bitter solitude. When Marcus finished, Evelyn joined him on stage. Her voice rang out, clear and moved. Today, we witnessed not only an exceptional musical performance, but also the courage and strength of a man who overcame the harshest biases to live authentically with his talent and passion. Marcus Reed is living proof that true talent knows no bounds of origin, race, or prejudice. Her words echoed across the square. Marcus stood beside her, feeling for the first time in years genuinely unburdened and free. He looked down at Maya's proud smile and realized this was not only his victory, but also a triumph of courage, honesty, and love. The support he had received from Evelyn, from Maya, and from everyone who believed in him when he needed it most. From the moment Marcus decided to face his past and return to music, his life changed in ways he never imagined. Yet the brief glow of triumph was quickly followed by even harsher trials, sparked by Vincent Moore's deep-seated jealousy. In the weeks after that heated confrontation, Vincent, still seething with humiliation from the Lexington performance, used every ounce of his influence to attack Marcus. He flooded newspapers and websites with vicious, mocking articles, digging into Marcus's background and skin color. He derided him as a janitor pretending to be an artist, insinuating that Marcus's talent was nothing more than a cheap emotional gimmick. Those cruel words spread like wildfire, infecting every corner of Marcus's life. People who once cheered him on now looked at him with suspicion. Marcus found himself at the center of a malicious media storm, unsure how to escape its swirl. Each morning, he woke to hateful messages. He felt trapped in a cycle of prejudice. Every day a tiring battle against baseless accusations Vincent had sown. His recently rekindled confidence began to fade, replaced by disappointment and bitterness. One late afternoon, Evelyn found Marcus brooding before his worn piano in his small apartment. Seeing the pain in his eyes, she gently said, "Marcus, don't let their cruelty hurt you. You deserve so much more than their venom." Marcus shook his head, despair in his voice. "I don't know anymore, Evelyn. Maybe Vincent was right. I'm just a janitor. I was foolish to think I could step out of the shadows." Evelyn's heart ached. She squeezed his hand and said firmly, "No, Marcus. You're not wrong. The real mistake is Vincent's and anyone else's who's narrow-minded like him. I won't stand by while they try to destroy your life." The next day, Evelyn held a special press conference at Lexington. Facing Vincent and dozens of cameras, she declared with unwavering authority, "I want everyone here to know this. Marcus Reed is not only a gifted musician but also one of the most dignified people I've ever met. Mr. Vincent Moore's slander and racism are the most shameful things I've witnessed in my career. Vincent's face went pale. He tried to retort, voice trembling with anger. "Miss Harper, you're defending a fraud who's exploiting people's pity." "Wrong, Mr. Moore," Evelyn cut in. "You're the one exploiting public trust to spread hatred, rooted in your own prejudice. Marcus uses music to heal and inspire. You use words to destroy and wound." The room fell silent. Reporters and guests held their breath as Evelyn's words landed like thunder. Vincent was speechless, unable to reply. In that moment, everyone saw who was speaking the truth. Marcus stood behind them, Evelyn's words pulling him out of the depths of despair. His heart swelled with gratitude as he watched this powerful woman defend him so publicly. After the stormy conference, Evelyn turned to Marcus, sincerity shining in her eyes. "Marcus, never let anyone tell you that you're not enough or not worthy. This world needs more people like you. People who dare to live authentically and face every challenge to uphold their own worth." Marcus met her gaze, feeling his faith and strength return. He realized that while the road ahead wouldn't be easy, he would not walk it alone. Nearby, Maya watched with pride shining in her eyes. In her gaze was the firm belief that her father would overcome every challenge. Marcus understood that, after all he'd endured, it was Vincent's cruel attacks that had made him braver, stronger, and more certain than ever about the path he had chosen. The days Marcus and Evelyn quietly spent building each other's trust grew into a rock-solid strength that carried Marcus confidently toward the most important performance of his life. This was more than just a concert. It was a powerful declaration of courage and resilience in the face of unfair prejudice. That evening, the City Arts Center's Grand Hall was packed to capacity. Brilliant stage lights shone down on the gleaming Steinway piano at center stage. Marcus waited in the wings, his heart pounding in his chest. He took a deep breath and locked eyes with Evelyn and Maya in the front row, drawing reassurance from their unwavering support. When Marcus stepped into the spotlight, enthusiastic applause filled the hall, pushing his nerves aside. He bowed humbly, then leaned into the microphone, his warm voice resonating throughout the auditorium. "Tonight, I am not here merely to perform. I play for everyone who's ever been wounded by prejudice. Your worth isn't defined by where you come from, the color of your skin, or your profession. True value lies in the strength of your spirit, your courage, and the honesty of your heart." The audience fell silent, moved by his words. Marcus laid his fingers on the keys, and the music poured forth, rich with emotion and power. Each note seemed to tell his life story, pain, loss, hope, and the rebirth that followed. But as he lost himself in the music, a commotion arose at the back of the hall. Vincent Moore stormed in, face twisted with anger, intent on disrupting Marcus's performance. He shouted over the music, "You're all being deceived. Marcus Reed is exploiting your pity for fame. He doesn't deserve your attention." Tension rippled through the auditorium. Marcus paused, heart racing, but in that moment he realized he wasn't alone. A chorus of boos and jeers rose up against Vincent. "Shut up, Mr. Moore. We came to hear Marcus." "We don't need your prejudice here." Evelyn sprang to her feet and strode forward, her voice ringing clear. "Vincent, you're wrong. To think hate and prejudice can overcome love and courage. Marcus has proven his worth, and you can't change that." Thunderous applause followed Evelyn's words. For the first time, Vincent stood powerless before the force of genuine courage and sincerity. He staggered back, stunned to see that the community's faith in Marcus had stripped his hatred of all its power. Overwhelmed by the crowd's rejection, Vincent turned and fled, his eyes full of defeat and bitterness. Marcus glanced at Evelyn and Maya, his gaze shining with renewed confidence. He nodded in gratitude, then resumed playing with even greater passion, demonstrating that true power belongs to music and bravery. Marcus finished the piece in a stirring finale that resonated in every heart. When the final note faded into silence, the hall was utterly still, captivated by the lasting echo of his performance. Seconds later, the audience erupted in the most sustained standing ovation Marcus had ever heard. He stood, trembling with pride and joy, his eyes fixed on Evelyn and Maya, two women whose love and support meant everything to him. Evelyn joined him on stage, gently placing her hand on his shoulder. Her voice wavered with emotion. "Tonight, Marcus showed us that prejudice can hurt us, but it will never triumph over a sincere heart and unwavering courage. I'm so proud to stand here beside this talented, brave man." Marcus felt the warmth of Evelyn's hand and gazed into her eyes, filled with deep gratitude. Maya rushed forward, wrapping him in a tight hug. "I always knew you'd do it, Daddy. You were amazing." In that moment, Marcus realized he had truly overcome the darkness of his past, prejudice, and pain to find his own path. With Evelyn's and Maya's love and the community's trust behind him, he was ready to begin a new chapter, one filled with hope, happiness, and freedom. Far away, Vincent left the hall alone and bitter, finally understanding that everything he'd pursued was an illusion. Marcus, Evelyn, and Maya, however, stood bathed in the bright light of truth and love, victorious through courage, sincerity, and unshakable faith. Over the weeks that followed, the quiet strengthening of trust between Marcus and Evelyn gave him the confidence he needed to step into the most important performance of his life. This wasn't just another concert. It was a powerful statement about courage and resilience in the face of unfair prejudice. That evening, the grand auditorium of the City Arts Center was packed. Bright stage lights gleamed down on the magnificent Steinway piano at center stage. Behind the curtains, Marcus's heart pounded in his chest. He drew a deep breath and looked toward Evelyn and Maya, sitting in the front row with eyes full of faith and encouragement. When Marcus walked onto the stage, thunderous applause greeted him, easing some of his nerves. He bowed to the audience with genuine humility. Then, placing his hand on the microphone, he spoke in his warm, rich voice. "Tonight, I'm not only performing for myself, I'm playing for everyone who has ever been hurt by prejudice, to show that our true worth isn't determined by our background, our skin color, or our profession. Our real value lies in our inner strength, our courage, and the sincerity of our hearts." The audience fell silent, moved by his heartfelt words. Marcus's fingers then brushed the keys, and immediately the music poured forth, filled with emotion and power. Each note told the story of his life, the pain and loss, the hope and renewal born from that very suffering. But as Marcus became lost in his music, a commotion broke out at the back of the hall. Vincent Moore strode in, his face twisted with anger and malice, deliberately trying to disrupt the performance. He shouted to draw everyone's attention. "You're all being fooled. Marcus Reed is just exploiting your pity to get famous. He doesn't deserve this spotlight." Tension crackled through the auditorium. Marcus paused, his heart racing, but in that moment he realized he was not alone. Voices rose in protest against Vincent's interruption. "Shut up, Mr. Moore. We're here to hear Marcus. We don't need your bigotry here." Evelyn leapt to her feet and strode forward, her voice ringing out across the hall. "Mr. Moore, you are completely mistaken if you think prejudice and hatred can triumph over love and courage. Marcus has proven his worth, and you cannot change that." Applause erupted in support of Evelyn's words. For the first time, Vincent felt utterly powerless in the face of genuine sincerity and bravery. Stunned, he realized his bigotry and selfishness held no sway against the community's faith in Marcus. Overwhelmed by the audience's rejection, Vincent turned and fled, his eyes full of bitter defeat. Meanwhile, Marcus looked to Evelyn and Maya, his gaze shining with renewed confidence. He nodded gratefully to the crowd and then let the music flow again, more powerfully than before, to prove once and for all that true strength lies in courage and authentic expression. When Marcus finished his piece, the auditorium fell into a hushed reverence before bursting into the most thunderous ovation imaginable. The audience rose to their feet, cheering without end. Marcus stood, his heart trembling with happiness and pride, gazing at Evelyn and Maya, these two women who meant the world to him, smiling with love and pride. Evelyn joined him on stage and gently placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice thick with emotion. "Tonight, Marcus has shown us that prejudice can wound us, but it can never conquer a sincere heart and an indomitable spirit. I am so proud to stand here beside this brave and gifted man." Marcus felt the warmth of Evelyn's hand and looked deeply into her eyes, overflowing with gratitude. Maya ran up and threw her arms around him, her small voice shining with joy. "I always knew you could do it, Daddy. You're amazing." In that moment, Marcus knew he had truly overcome the darkness of his past, the prejudice, and the pain to find his own path. With the love of Evelyn and Maya, and the community's unwavering belief behind him, he was ready to begin the next chapter of his life, one filled with hope, happiness, and freedom. From afar, Vincent slipped away in lonely bitterness, realizing that everything he had tried to hold on to was an illusion. Meanwhile, Marcus, Evelyn, and Maya stood bathed in the bright light of truth and love, knowing they had achieved a true victory, one won by courage, sincerity, and an unshakable faith in each other. From the moment Marcus resolved to use his music to heal wounded hearts, his life, and Evelyn's and Maya's, entered an entirely new chapter. The pain, the prejudice, and the seemingly insurmountable trials that once defined them now felt like distant memories fading behind them. Ahead lay a brilliant future guided by love, courage, and genuine compassion. Together they built a new home, where every sound of life blended into a beautiful symphony. It was a cozy house tucked away on a quiet street, with a living room filled with laughter, piano melodies, and the impromptu tunes Marcus played each late afternoon. Maya truly embraced Evelyn as part of the family, eagerly sharing the day's little joys and grand dreams with her. Marcus continued teaching free weekend piano lessons to underprivileged children. Each time he sat beside a trembling little boy or girl and guided their fingers to the keys, he remembered his own past, how he'd once been pushed to the brink, nearly losing all hope and faith. Now, he was the one lifting others up, showing them their own worth and reminding them they deserve the very best. As for Vincent, after admitting his mistakes and accepting defeat, he quietly stepped back to live a more private life, reflecting on his past actions. Sometimes he would quietly appear at Marcus's recitals, standing at the back and watching, his heart now strangely peaceful, free of envy and bitterness. Marcus had shown him that courage and love, not prejudice, are the true keys to overcoming life's challenges. One weekend evening, Marcus, Evelyn, and Maya organized a special community concert in the little park near their home. There was no lavish stage or bright spotlights, only warmth and humanity. Neighbors, the children Marcus had taught, and even former skeptics gathered together, forming a circle of love around him and his familiar piano. Marcus sat at his well-worn piano, its keys rich with meaning. He placed his fingers gently on the keys, his heart overflowing with emotion. His eyes instinctively sought Evelyn and Maya, who smiled softly, cheering him on from the edge of the gathering. Marcus returned their smiles and began playing a deeply tender piece, each note whispering to Rachel, the woman he once loved with all his heart, and who had taught him the power of love and bravery. As the music filled the park, Marcus felt Rachel's presence beside him, her gentle hand resting on his shoulder, encouraging him to live a full, meaningful life. He knew Rachel had never truly left him. She lived on in every note he played, in every breath and heartbeat. She was the invisible, powerful force that carried him through prejudice and pain to become the strong, free, and happy man he was. When the final notes faded into the night's hush, only the breeze through the trees and the soft sniffles of the audience remained. Warm, heartfelt applause broke out. The cheers were as vibrant and sincere as the journey Marcus had taken. He rose and bowed, eyes shining with joy and pride. Evelyn stepped forward and draped an arm around him, her voice thick with emotion. "You did beautifully, Marcus. I know Rachel is so proud of you." Marcus nodded, misty-eyed, and met Evelyn's gaze. "Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you for helping me find myself again, and for becoming part of our little family." Maya ran up and threw her arms around them both, her face radiant with happiness. "I love you, Dad. I love you, Evelyn. We'll always be together, right?" Marcus and Evelyn exchanged tender smiles and answered her with warmth and certainty. "Yes, Maya. Our family will always be together." That night, after everyone had gone home, the three of them stood under the gentle moonlight. Marcus realized that overcoming pain, prejudice, and hardship had not only restored his own worth, but had led him to a brand new beginning, one lit by music, courage, and boundless love. He wrapped his arms around Evelyn and Maya, his heart more peaceful than ever. He knew life would still bring challenges, but he was no longer afraid, for he would always have the two people he loved most by his side. And somewhere beyond, he sensed Rachel smiling, quietly watching over them, happy that he had finally found the path to true happiness, the path of understanding, bravery, and love that never runs dry. Thank you all for joining Marcus, Evelyn, and Maya on this heartfelt journey. Marcus's story proves that courage, love, and unwavering faith in oneself can overcome every prejudice and challenge life brings. What part of Marcus's journey touched your heart the most? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this meaningful story, please hit like, share it with friends and family to spread this positive message, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming inspiring stories. Thank you again, everyone. Remember, no matter how hard life gets, we all deserve to live our dreams and our happiness to the fullest. Goodbye, and see you next time.